Chapter 8 New Zealand's Past. About 1,000 years ago, the first Maori came to New Zealand. They traveled from islands in the Pacific Ocean to the country that they called Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. At first, they lived in both islands, but later they lived mainly on the coasts and rivers of the North Island. In 1642, the Dutch sailor Abel Tasman visited New Zealand and gave it its name from Zeeland, Sealand, which is a part of the Netherlands. Captain James Cook visited the islands 4 times between 1769 and 1777, sailed all the way around them and made the first map of the country. In 1840, Captain William Hobson wrote the Treaty of Waitangi. This said that the Queen of Great Britain, Queen Victoria, was now Queen of New Zealand too. About 40 Maori chiefs agreed to this, and later another 500 did so. But when more British people came to live in New Zealand, fighting about the land began between the Maori and the British. The fighting finally ended in about 1870. In 1863, gold was found in the South Island, and thousands of people hurried to New Zealand to look for gold. Later, thousands more people came from Britain to the new country. In 1871, the white population was 250,000. 10 years later, it was 500,000. New Zealand became a kind of big British farm, sending meat, butter, and cheese back to Britain by ship. The young country was not afraid to try new things. In 1893, New Zealand was the first country in the world to let women vote. In 1830s, the New Zealand government decided that all schools and hospitals should be free for all its people. And in 1987, New Zealand became a nuclear-free zone. This means that ships that use nuclear power or carry nuclear bombs cannot come into New Zealand waters, and that the country doesn't use nuclear power to make electricity. New Zealand soldiers fought in both world wars beside British and American soldiers, and most New Zealanders felt that they were still part of the great family of countries that once belonged to Britain. But there have been big changes in the country since the 1950s. From the 1950s to the 1970s, many immigrants came to New Zealand from Pacific islands like Tonga and Samoa, often to work in factories. And from the 1980s, New Zealand began to look first at the jobs that immigrants could do, instead of the country that they came from. This opened the doors to many people who had not been able to move to New Zealand before. Today, 250,000 people from Pacific Islands live in New Zealand and 250,000 from Asian countries. Between March 2005 and August 2006, something new and interesting happened in New Zealand. Women had the 5 most important jobs in the country. One of the 5 women was Queen Elizabeth II, who is the Queen of New Zealand, and 2 others were Helen Clark, the Prime Minister, and Dame Sean Elias, the country's top judge. It is the first time that this has happened anywhere in the world.